Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're jumping straight into a really compelling story from the Bible.
hmm
Specifically, it's First Chronicles chapter 21. We want to unpack it a bit and, see what it means for us today,
Right. It's a pivotal moment, really, in King David's story. The text says an adversary actually prompted David to count the fighting men in Israel.
which sounds, well, almost normal, doesn't it? Like
Right.
basic administration for a king.
You'd think so, knowing your resources, your military strength.
But the story flags it immediately. David's own commander, Joab, he pushes back. He's like, why do this? This could bring guilt on Israel.
Exactly. Joab hesitates big time. He questions the whole thing. David, though, he insists.
So what's the deal? Why was counting soldiers suddenly such a sin?
Well, Joab's reaction kind of points to the core issue, doesn't it? It seems to be about trust.
Trust. How so?
It looks like David was starting to rely on, the numbers, the visible strength of his army, rather than relying purely on God's power and protection.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like shifting confidence from God to statistics.
Precisely. The text even mentions Joab deliberately left out a couple of tribes when counting because he found the king's orders so repugnant.
And the fallout was, well, it was fast and brutal.
Devastating. God was deeply displeased, the text says. A plague hits Israel.
And the numbers are staggering. 70,000 men died.
Just like that. It's hard to even imagine.
But David's reaction then is quite striking.
Oh, absolutely. There's no defensiveness, no attempt to justify. He immediately tells God, I have sinned greatly. I've acted very foolishly.
He owns it completely. That immediate remorse, that's powerful.
It really is. And then things get even more intense.
Right. The prophet Gad shows up.
hmm Sent by God with basically a choice of consequences, three really tough options.
Yeah, what were they again? 3 years of famine,
Or 3 months of being defeated and pursued by your enemies.
3 days of plague straight from God.
Wow.
Talk about being between a rock and a hard place.
Seriously tough choices. They really underline how significant the offense was.
David's choice is revealing, isn't it?
Absolutely. He says, and this is key, let me fall into the hands of the Lord, for his mercy is very great, but do not let me fall into human hands.
So he chooses the plague,
Yeah.
the direct judgment from God.
Yeah. Because he trusts God's mercy, even in judgment, more than he trusts human mercy or maybe human cruelty. It's quite a statement of faith, ironically.
And that trust, it wasn't misplaced, was it?
No. As the angel carrying out the plague reached Jerusalem, God relented. He stopped the destruction.
And where did it stop? At a specific place, right?
Right, at the threshing floor of a man named Ornan the Jebusite.
Okay, and that spot becomes really important later on.
Hugely important. God tells David, through Gad, to build an altar right there. David buys the place, builds the altar, makes offerings.
And God answers with fire from heaven, stopping the plague for good.
Yes. And that very spot, Ornan's threshing floor, the place where judgment was halted, that's where Solomon eventually built the temple.
Wow. A place marked by near disaster becomes the center of worship. That's incredible.
It's a powerful picture of redemption, isn't it?
Definitely. Okay, so that's the story in essence. Let's pivot now. What are the takeaways for you listening today? How does this ancient account speak into our lives now?
Well, one huge theme is that whole tension between self-reliance and trusting God. David, counting his troops, feels like he's leaning on his own strength, his own resources.
Which is so relatable, right? We do that all the time. We trust our bank account, our job title, our social media followers.
Exactly. We look for security and things we can measure, but this story really challenges that. It says, God's favor, his power, that's what truly matters, not the stats.
It's a good reminder to check where our actual confidence is placed.
For sure. And then there's the Joab situation. He gave David solid, wise counsel.
Yeah, and David just blew him off.
Right. How often do we do that? Okay, good advice from someone we trust, but our pride, our ego, maybe just our uncertainty makes us ignore it.
Oof, yeah, that hits home. It highlights the need for humility, doesn't it?
Oh,
To actually listen.
it really does. And then think about David's repentance, how fast it was.
No messing around. He saw the consequence, he knew he'd messed up, and he confessed.
That speed is important. We often delay, rationalize, try to minimize our mistakes. But David shows the power of just, owning it quickly. It opens the door to healing much faster.
And it connects to that incredible mercy theme. David chose to fall into God's hands.
Yes. That verse, 1 Chronicles 21:13, his mercy is very great. David knew God's character. Even facing punishment, he banked on God's mercy over human reactions.
That speaks volumes about how we should approach God, and maybe even how we should treat others when they mess up. Choosing mercy.
It's a profound insight into God's heart and a model for us. And finally, that threshing floor becoming the temple site.
Yeah, that transformation is amazing.
It really shows how God can take our places of pain, our biggest mistakes, even the sites of judgment, and turn them into something new, something central to his purposes if we surrender them to him.
So even our failures aren't wasted in his plan. There's always potential for redemption.
Exactly. He can bring hope out of pretty much anything.
So let's tie this together. How can reflecting on this story actually strengthen your faith, practically speaking, today?
Well, I think understanding these lessons helps in several ways. Recognizing the trap of self-reliance pushes you to actively depend more on God day to day.
Okay.
Valuing humility, being willing to listen to wise counsel that protects you from some potentially painful mistakes.
Right.
Embracing quick repentance keeps your relationship with God clear and open. Choosing to trust in and extend mercy reflects God's own character. And believing in redemption gives you hope, even when things look bleak.
So it deepens trust because you see God's consistent character,
Yeah,
his justice, yes, but also his immense mercy played out.
absolutely. That consistency is the bedrock. He's the same God today, just as merciful, just as ready to redeem. That's a solid foundation for faith.
That's really well put. Timeless stuff. So maybe a final thought for you to chew on. Where in your life right now might you be leaning a bit too much on your own numbers, your own strength, instead of leaning fully on God? Just think about that. What could change, maybe even this week, if you consciously decided to shift that trust back into his hands in that one area?
That's a great question to ponder.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you keep thinking about these powerful themes.